Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Fixed on Racing. Going to be talking about the races of September 23rd, Saturday, Pennsylvania Derby Day. I'm very much looking forward to. I'm your host, Peter Fornatale, coming to you from the little house on the east side in Saratoga. I'm happy to be joined, as ever, by the man who tells us what the fixed odds are going to be. He talks us through replays. He wears his fresh pink jacket. He's Dallas Baker. What's going on, my man?
Pete, exciting, isn't it? What a day this PA Derby has turned into. PA Derby Day has turned into, hasn't it? Like, it's just come from nowhere in the last few years, and 14 awesome races, huge prize money all day. Great credit to everyone at PARX for putting on such a great card. That's become, just a little surprise jewel in the crown of the racing calendar, which is fantastic to see.
And we have the perfect guest for you. She is known on our In the Money airwaves for giving out lots of interesting big long shots and generally being entertaining. She's also known to you as the woman behind the microphone at PARX. Going to be making a little bit of history on this Saturday. She is Jessica Paquette. Jessica, what's going on?
Well, I might just change my Twitter bio to generally entertaining. I like that. It's a great week here at PARX. I mean, just so excited to be a part of such a monumental day. 14 races, just a loaded card from start to finish. The racing office made the announcer's job really hard, made the handicapper's job really hard, but a great day for the fans.
Congratulations, Jess, on being the first female caller to be calling a grade one. We assume anywhere. The world's a big place, but somebody might correct us along the way. But congratulations on that. But I mean, you've been involved with PARX for a long time. What's the general feel of? I'd imagine there's a great sense of pride on what has been able to be eked out of this day and to turn it into as I said, such a great event.
There's a great sense of pride, and I've gotten to be involved the past couple of years as the paddock handicapper on this big day, which was great fun. And now to get to be in the booth and have even the tiniest footnote in horse racing history to play a little part is just such an honor. And the thing I like most about this card is it's not only a showcase of some of the best horses in the country, we also really showcase the local horsemen and women as well, and the Pennsylvania breeding product. There are just a lot of chances for the locals to shine on a day like this too. And that's why I think where the real pride comes in, where they get to compete with some of the best horsemen and women in the country and hold their own.
And we'll get to some of those local hopes as we get on with the show. Before we dive into the body of the show, and we'll start by talking about race number 11, the Grade 2 Gallant Bob Stakes, we should address the elephant in the room, or shall I say the elephant in the clouds. Weather forecast, not so nice. I understand you've been doing some anti-rain dances. You've got crystals, bracelets, the whole 9 yards, hoping for that San Diego weather to somehow prevail. But if weather is in the game here, how bad do we think it's going to be? Is it affecting the way you're looking at these races at all?
So I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. And looking at the weather forecast, it is a little foreboding. It is a little intimidating. I'm just kind of hoping the worst of it misses us. You can often tell how anxious I am about something by how many bracelets I have on. We're at up to 8. We are up to 8 bracelets. So we are kind of inching towards Stevie Nicks territory at this point. But, I'm just hoping sending good stuff out to the universe, and maybe it will just be like a moderately rainy day. But I do think you should handicap kind of with an off track in mind. And turf is going to be a question mark. I'm hoping we stay on the turf. Obviously, the turf races are super competitive. But, if it turns out to not be safe to do so, we're going to have to just roll with it.
Mm-hmm. Let's get on to this Gallant Bob for the 3-year-olds going 6 furlongs and a field of 10. Dallas will bring you in to give us an overview of this market and to do your best Warner Wolf impression as I date myself, and you'll send us then to the videotape.
Lovely, mate. It's pretty much a standard market here to start the proceedings in race 11. Rybet is your $3.50 favourite. Touch under 3-1 on the decimals, $3.80 for Nautical Star. $4.60 for Damon's Mould. So just a traditional thing, 90% Matty, $5.50. As you can see, it's going roll by roll by roll, 9-2. But their Praetorian Guard is at 40-1. And I think that's going to be worth mentioning as we segue into the replay. From the Salvatore de Bundesbrand about a month ago at PARX, this was its lead-in, and I'm sure Jessica is going to explain to you why we are looking at this tape.
Sylvester Gonzalez, they're beginning to move.
Take it away, Jessica, as we see Praetorian Guard make this big move, just missing to Gordian Knot back in the local stake on August 22nd, the Salvatore M. de Bunda Spring.
So this is a race. That was a race which was a terrific effort from Praetorian Guard and not his first really good effort. To me, this is a horse that gets continually overlooked. He does have a running style that sometimes leaves him with an awful lot to do. He goes right to the back and then makes a big late run. On these big days, when there are riders like Arad Ortiz and Johnny Velasquez, it's easy to forget about the locals. Dexter Haddock on a closer. There's no one here at PARX I would rather have. His sense of timing from off the pace is terrific. And I think this one certainly will have some pace to run into. Also, Gordian Knot, who he just missed to last time out. I mean, he got him right past the wire. That was one of those photos that I thought I was going to call it, and then I wimped out a little bit. I wimped out in the last minute there, but Gordian Knot is not a slouch. He is really developed as a 3-year-old. I think he's certainly the kind that can run against open company as well. And Praetorian Guard, he'll be flying late. I don't know if he's good enough to win against a horse like Rivet, maybe. I'm also intrigued by Damon's Bound, who seems to finally be correct. But he's my strongest opinion on the day to run his race.
And at 40-1 in the fixed odds of this runner, who's 10-1 listed on the morning line, maybe one you want to get stuck into first. And reading between the lines of what Jess is saying, I'm hearing this is one you're probably going to want to cover in all 3 spots. Speaking of which, Dallas, do we have any promotions this week along those lines?
Oh, of course we do, Pete. The same ones that we've been mentioning for the last week. And for people joining in for the first time, it's pretty easy. You've got probably 3 levels of bonuses. 1, new account holders sign up, $50, no strings attached, in free bets. To noting free bets, it's not just $50 you can withdraw, you actually have to use them to bet. And then for anybody who is an existing account holder, dollar for dollar match, put in $50, you get $50 in bonus bets as well too. And then throughout the day, as we have mentioned, most of the races we're talking about, and obviously keeping in mind what we spoke about with the weather, and weather usually means scratchings, most of the races as they stand at the moment will have money back for second and third. But as we have mentioned on the previous weeks, if those races get decimated with scratchings, get down below 8 runners, it'll be just money back for second. Or if it gets down to 6 runners, bye-bye money back. So, but, with the races we are talking about now in general, we'll have that until Saturday morning. But as we've mentioned the last few weeks, just check the website on Saturday morning after the scratchings come through, and it'll be clearly shown at the top of each race whether those money back for second and third offers apply.
Monmouth Bets, the place you want to go to check this out, and I would go sooner rather than later to try to grab that seemingly inflated number on Praetorian Guard in the Gallant. Bob, let's proceed to race number 12. This is the Grade 1 Cotillion for the 3-year-old fillies, going 1 mile and a 16th. Dallas, what are we looking at in terms of prices here?
We're looking at a pretty short favourite here, Pete. Pretty mischievous. Come up even money. Wouldn't be surprised to see it get into the red. And then a bunch of them sort of sorting themselves out behind it. Ceiling Crusher next, a Colt after it, and then Foggy Night and Defining Purpose at 9-1. And Foggy Night, who we're going to have a look at right now, winning her lead up in the Catherine Sophia Stakes.
Foggy Night, a looming presence on her inside. Majestic Creed beginning to drop back. Promise Her America getting engaged. The favorite, South Lawn, she's going to have to do a bit better. She is spinning her wheels towards the back. At the top of the stretch, Yesternight confronted by Foggy Night to the inside. Foggy Night, the Chestnut, Yesternight, the Dark Bay. These 2 fillies slugging it out, and it is Foggy Night. Foggy Night says, not on my home track today. Foggy Night with a 16th left to go under Luis Saez puts away Yesternight. Majestic Creed gamely fighting on, and Foggy Night wins the Catherine Sophia Stakes.
This was a performance from this filly that I was so impressed by. I was disappointed to not see Yesternight come back and try the Cotillion. I thought she earned her spot. She ran really great in the Catherine Sophia. But Foggy Night has shown she can run against open company. She can take her show on the road. She can go and do just about anywhere. And I spoke to trainer Butch Reed, and he is very confident that she is going to run her race and show up and perform the way she has. The one buyer beware with Foggy Night, and I do really like her in this spot. If you look through her record, 10 starts, pretty much flawless first through second. That one blemish did come over and off track. So she does have to show that she can handle the sloppy going.
Yeah, it's definitely a small concern, though. That was a while ago, and and not all sloppy tracks are created equally. So there is that. If you were wanting to talk about an alternative, Jessica, or a horse to maybe use in exotics with Foggy Night, where would you go? I mean, I guess in a way, the key question of this race is: are you with Pretty Mischievous or against?
With, very much with. I think she's formidable. I actually saw her in the barn this morning. And the thing I'm most impressed about by this filly is her physicality. Sometimes these 3-year-old fillies, especially after a hard campaign, and she's kind of danced every dance and she's gone everywhere and she's done everything and she's done everything they've asked of her. She's raced, I believe, 10 times since her debut last September. And in, modern times, that's a real campaign. And sometimes you see them by this time of the year, especially with the temperatures changing, that they start to wilt a little bit physically. Whereas she's put on weight, she's put on condition. I asked Brendan Walsh about that this morning to see if I was just hallucinating. And he said, no, she's gotten a little bit fuller around her barrel and she's really come into her own.
That's amazing to hear about one who's had so many grade 1 successes already. That even money, that's sounding like it probably will be the price near the off. Any others in here in this grade 1, Jess, we should touch on with either positive or potentially negative feelings?
So this is a wacky one, okay? Bear with me. And this is one to maybe use in your exotics. I don't know if she's good enough to win, but I think she's good enough to ruin your exotics if you leave her out. And that's all the way to the outside. Majestic Creed, local filly. She runs her race every single time. Is it good enough to make her a grade 1 winner? I'm not entirely sure, but I do think she's going to show up and she's going to perform. And she's been proven to be quite versatile. Also loves and moves forward over a sloppy track.
Good points in terms of the trip, in terms of the surface, and I think we'll be dealing with a very big price. What was the current number on Majestic Creed, Dallas? I'm assuming the outsider of the field.
Yeah, well, not only drawn the outside, Pete, but also is Jess the outsider of the field. 70-1 for Jess. I tell you what, Jess, you're making a statement in your first go on the show. The 40-1 tip in the first, and almost a 10-1 on top with a 70-1 chance. You're potentially going to make a hero of yourself here.
Oh, only if I'm right. But I mean, anyone can sit up here and go with the logical ideas. I think you try to find clever ways, because on these big days, horses are coming in from everywhere. It's hard to measure how their forms are going to stack up against each other.
It wouldn't be the first time you've tipped something at a wacky price on our airwaves. I'm excited. And it feels like, no reason to really be against the favorite, but, we always talk about how we like to use the fixed odds prices in conjunction with the tote, an opportunity to maybe put Pretty Mischievous on top in some combinations with those bigger prices underneath in the cotillion. Let's get to the race that gives the day its name. It's the grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby for these 3-year-olds going 1 1/8 miles. We've got a field of 11. Dallas, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that the market is going to have 2 pretty close at the top of it here with Saudi Crown and Reincarnate. Is that right? What prices are they, and how far out is anything else?
Yeah, almost right, Pete. Actually, we've got one splitting the middle there. So Saudi Crown is 270, which is about 9 to 5 on the fractional, and is your favourite. You got that one right. But we've got Scotland next pick at $5 or 4 to 1, and Reincarnate next online at $6 or 5 to 1 in the fractionals.
Interesting. Very interesting. The Baffert enthusiasm, I would have thought you would have been looking to maybe keep that one a little bit more safe. What are we going to do in terms of tape for this one?
Well, considering you're sitting at Saratoga, Pete, we might as well go up to the Spa and see how Magic Tap prevailed, recording a good number here in its lead-up race at Saratoga.
The rail with a 2-length lead. Magic Tap second. 8 lengths back. He's got Swagger is starting a nice bid in the center of the racetrack. A 16th to go. Film Star 2-length lead. Magic Tap not surrendering. He's going to try and grind him down, and here he comes. Magic Tap within a half length, within a neck. Magic Tap and Tyler Gaffleone run down Film Star.
Love the experience that Magic Tap has shown going these slightly longer distances. We talk all the time on the shows about how sometimes the difference between 1 1/16 and 1 1/8 can play like more than a mere 16th of a mile. What did you want us to see in this tape, Jess?
To me, this horse is like the quintessential Steve Asmussen horse that's getting really good when it counts. He reminds me a lot of Society, who won the Cotillion last year, who was a little bit of an unknown, getting a big class test against Grade 1 company and that same kind of tactical speed, and boy, did she prevail. I think Magic Tap also kind of engineered to really handle an off-track, tap it out of a Go Sapper mare. The distance kind of checks a lot of boxes. I wanted to be able to take a big stand against Saudi Crown, just trying to be a little bit clever. And I saw him this morning, and boy, did he make a believer out of me. He sells himself a little bit more in person than I was expecting. I just came off the van in great order, really bright, really happy, and just taking it all in a really kind of intelligent sort of way. So Saudi Crown kind of won me over a little bit, but I'm still going with Magic Tap.
Let's talk about Reincarnate for a minute. Bob Baffert's obviously had a ton of success in this race before, and this horse sounds like, from a fixed odds point of view, one they're willing to take on a little bit. How about you, Jessica? How serious of a contender is Reincarnate in this year's Pennsylvania Derby?
I'm using him off of all of my tickets. He's a toss for me. I think they're going to have to send, right? From the outside post, you really are not going to have any other option. I don't really think this is the kind of horse that loves getting mud kicked back in his face all that much. So they're going to have to send. When I talked to Jimmy Barnes yesterday, he was a little cagey about what their strategy was going to be, but no, I imagine they're going to send. And I just think he's going to be up against it, trying to get the lead from the outside post, with Saudi Crown kind of drawing that perfect post and just firing right out of the gate.
What of Scotland, who's very, very strong in the fixed odds betting? Normally it doesn't take much arm twisting for me to throw in a Bill Mott trainee. I was just a little bit worried that he was found out for class a little bit last time in the Travers. Maybe didn't like the muddy surface, but that's not going to help him today either. Is he going to be in your exotics reckoning at least?
I would like him to be, but I kind of had the same feeling that you did. I thought he exposed himself a little bit. I was very disappointed with what a no-show he was in the Travers. I'm willing to maybe give him the pass that was too bad to be true, and that he'll get another shot here. But the muddy track doesn't bode well for him. And I think that muddy track on Travers Day is a lot different than the sloppy track we'll likely have for this. So those are two very different sort of off tracks. But Scotland really needs to bounce back off of that effort.
What about any of these at a bigger price, Dallas? And then we'll bring you back in for a comment. But anything at a bigger price that you're going to want to keep on your tickets?
I like Il Miracolo a little bit. He won the Smarty Jones. It was sort of a weird race. He was awfully hard to handle. I thought Luis Saez did a really good job trying to keep him straight. He looks like he's tough in the mouth and a little quirky and a little weird to handle. He wound up drifting very wide in the stretch. Michael Sanchez picks up the mount on him with Saez out, obviously. And I think Michael is a strong, thoughtful rider who should be able to handle him quite well. And I wouldn't count him out of the exotics.
Your thoughts, Dallas?
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, I think the market's pretty well right. It looks to it, but I should give the caveat too that we've been talking about the potential of rain. This market has probably been done more for assuming good conditions. So, but also too, I mean, we're recording this Thursday morning. As you get close to the race, the market will evolve. So whenever we're talking about prices on the preview here, use them as a guide, because there's a lot of other layers that will go into that before those prices go up. I mean, they're going to be pretty well close to it, but especially if we do have a decent weather event that comes into it, obviously, and then scratchings as well too, and how that will then reshuffle the market order as well. So, what we're talking about now, use as a guide, but they'll be, it's a pretty good guide.
And when there's a big potential overlay, I would say take an early bird gets the worm approach.
Definitely.
Whereas when it's something that's a little bit more marginal, you can take a wait and see attitude. Yeah, then probably it makes sense to wait and see how the track is going to come up, maybe even how the track is playing. And of course, the scratches are going to affect your final price as well, as we've discussed on other shows. But boy, I have to say, when there's as big of a rick as that of the 40-1 earlier in the Gallant Bob on a 10-1 shot, I'd have no problem just wading right into those waters. Jess, any other thoughts on the Pennsylvania Derby before we pivot to our nightcap?
I think that covers it, but it's a really good nightcap.
Yeah, let's get to this one. We've got an allowance race for these fillies and mares, 6 furlongs on the dirt. We've got a full field of 14. Full field of 14 on a rainy day. I'm sure that's not causing any stress or consternation at all. But Dallas, how have you priced this one up from this far out?
Yeah, pretty wide, Pete. Wicked Sight's your favourite at $4 or 3-1 on the fractional. Just ahead of Practicality, 7-2 or $4.60. $5.50 for Comedy Act at the top there, or 9-2 in the fractionals, and obviously pretty tight condensed market as you get out from that. And the favourite is what we're going to talk about for a change here from Jessica. Wicked Sight leading early on in this race, off a short little break and just fading on the line. But this is how Wicked Sight prepared for this big final race.
And nothing from Clout Chaser. The half 46 flat as they make their way around the turn. Wicked Sight confronted by Fleur de Sambre, who swings to the outside for her bid. Desert Dalliance also making up some ground. Wicked Sight hanging tough, but Fleur de Sambre has the momentum. Now she has to brace for the challenge of Desert Dalliance, who has her sights set on the leader. It is Fleur de Sambre and Michael Sanchez in command and handily here. There's 16th left to go, and Fleur de Sambre, Pennsylvania bred, going to be an easy winner. Fleur de Sambre over Desert Dalliance, Wicked Sight third, followed by Worst Behavior in fourth.
So this is one of my strongest opinions on the entire card. I've been so impressed by this filly since her debut. She's been very green. Clearly she had a late start. She didn't debut until she was 4 years old. But the more she figures it out, I think the better she gets. And I think she's really still figuring out what her running style is. Big front running victorious in her debut, then showed a lot of heart and tenacity and came from off the pace in that second start, then went back to being more forwardly placed. Now, apprentice Jamie Torres has left us here at PARX for Churchill Downs. He's gone off to greener pastures where I think he's going to be very successful. So she gets Florent Giroux aboard. So not really a downgrade there. I think a rider with that kind of experience for a horse that can be a little tricky coming out of the gate. She's just green. I think that really helps her chances here. She is a funny filly to watch warm up. She likes to warm up very quietly. Barely gets out of a trot, just kind of. Jamie has always kept her very quiet, and I think that's very deliberate. But this filly, no shortage on talent. She's one of my stronger opinions today.
And another one that I think will be benefited by the turn back in distance, because you could definitely see her. I love that when they've gone farther and they still project on a pace map to be on the lead. I love the switch to Giroux just for, what he does well. I think fits Wicked Sight.
Gets them out of the gate really well.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's a good draw, right? I mean, you don't the ability to break, you do have some speed, a little bit of speed on the outside, but it looks like most of the speed is inside. So he can break and hopefully choose his position, whether he's going to go forward or maybe try to sit just off. Who do you see as the main dangers, Jess?
So there's one mare that she's a little hit or miss, but Buxom is a big price and kind of could surprise. She's the 2, had a good win last time out. Her name, cracks me up every time, and I have to resist the urge to make jokes. The amount of times I've wanted to say like Buxom is flattening out in the stretch, like I just can't because of who I am as a person. But she's one, can handle it off track, can close. I think she'll be making an impact late. I'm using her on my tickets as well.
Excellent. Couple of strong ideas there in the last race. While we have you though, Jess, I know you've looked at all of these races, and I wanted to give you the chance to cherry pick a couple of opportunities. We've got more stakes racing early on the card, including some PA bred stakes action in the Plum Pretty. Who did you like in that one?
Well, the Plum Pretty kind of shapes up to be like a paid workout for Morning Matcha, but that's too easy for me. Let's try to be a little bit clever, right? And I'm a little intrigued by the 3 Warriors Ransom, the Jamie Ness barn, certainly firing on all cylinders right now. Barnes had quite a few multi-win days recently, and this filly has a massive turn of foot from off the pace, just flies late. Off track, a little bit of a question mark for me with her, but I think she can handle it, and I think the pace comes back to her a little bit.
That's race number 6. The Plum Pretty, and we'll give you another one too, just one race later. Graded stakes action in the form of the Grade 3 Greenwood Cup Stakes. You, like me, appreciate these races that test stamina as well as speed, Jess. That's what we're going to be getting in this 1.5-mile contest. What do you like?
Next, obviously, getting a ton of attention, deservedly so. He's a true marathon kind of horse, and as a marathon runner, I can appreciate that. But I'm going with the hometown hero, riding with Biden. He loves this racetrack, and I think he's come back. He got a bit of a vacation after a very disappointing effort in the Pegasus World Cup, and I think he came back a different horse. He comes into the paddock like breathing fire and on the muscle, and goes onto the track with like this renewed sense of enthusiasm. I thought he had gotten maybe a little dull towards the end of last year after a tough campaign, and he is coming into this race as good as he's ever been.
riding with Biden, excellent recent form figures, and a chance to post the mild upset in the Greenwood Cup for Jessica. Really appreciate you on what must be an insane week, taking some time out to chat with us. Need to remind folks one more time before we get to the next segment of the show, we've got different kinds of bonuses. We've got a returning bonus. We've got a bonus for new players. Monmouth Bets, the place to go. That'll also give you the info on where you'll get your money back for place in these bets. You can check it out all there on Monmouth Bets. This is a fantastic new opportunity to bet, and you can use it very cleverly in conjunction with your traditional betting as well to really maximize your opportunities. Jessica, any closing thoughts from you before we go to the break?
Just think sunny thoughts, everybody. Just think some sunny thoughts for me. But post time's 11:35. It's a great day. 14 races, super day, celebrating racing here at PARX. Join us if you're local. Tune in if you're not. Follow me on Twitter. Be nice if you do.
And good luck, Jess. Well done, and congratulations again. And look forward to 14 big races. And I'm pretty sure at the end of it, you're looking forward to a nice drink as well too.
Thanks, guys. I sure am.
We'll be back right after this. Next up on the show, we head down to racing where we've had a lot of success so far. If you've been paying attention, we're going to bring in our form expert and ace price assessor from Caymanas Park in Jamaica, Naresh Nagrani. Naresh, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Pete?
I'm good, but not as good as the people who've been backing your tips, because we've talked about I think 6 races so far. One, we had a scratching, and we're 4 from the other 5. Naresh, what are we going to do? We're going to keep this going this weekend?
I promise to try it.
Well,
That's what we need.
When we introduced Naresh for the first time, Pete, I did say he was one of the best I'd ever come across, and it's nice to see my mate stepping up and proving that. So it looks we've got 2 days racing here. Obviously, we'll talk about Saturday as the main, when Naresh has got 3 races again picked out. But it's another thick day. Saturday's probably the pick of the 2 days. 10 races, really good betting races in the main. So over to Naresh to work it out, or back to you to introduce Naresh to start working it out, Pete.
Well, let's do it. I know we're going to talk about some races on the Saturday card first, Naresh. Let's go to this 6th race. What are we looking at here?
Well, in this 6th race, we're going with number 1, No More Deals, which we expect a pretty decent price, somewhere in the $6 to $8 range. And the angle on No More Deals is that he's a horse that had ability before, kind of lost his way, but his last run was very good. And we think he could possibly be, in Jamaica, they call it a one-move candidate, means lead from start to finish, right? And the funny part is, one of the anticipated favorites in this race, which is number 10, Real Boss, he was right alongside No More Deals at the furlong pole the other day after No More Deals set the pace, and he just couldn't pass him for a second. And sometimes going an extended trip leads to a gentler pace. So we're going to go with number 1, No More Deals here at a pretty decent price.
And Naresh, your thoughts on the favourite Gilbert? I know obviously people aren't privy to our conversations that go on behind the scenes, but I know Gilbert is a horse that you've been left a little bit flat with lately. Who's currently favourite?
Right, so
should mention Gilbert's $2.70 favourite at the moment. Real Boss $3.50, and No More Deals around about that $6 mark that Naresh mentioned.
And Gilbert and Real Boss are both American breds, but they're both horses that seem to like to look at the back ends of other horses when they come into the stretch day. And another terminology that they use in Jamaica is they stand up, meaning at the furlong pole, when the going gets tough, they just can't find what they need to find. So notice our terminology that we used earlier at Dallas. They flatter to deceive.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And pack chasers could be another term that is used around the world. Yeah, like they They did said have a look, Pete, those horses that Naresh mentioned. And, it's funny with horses like that, isn't it, Pete, that their form just looks like it stacks up so much, but it wouldn't matter if they're running against the slowest horse of the world or the fastest horse of the world. They're probably just going to run up to the back of them and then go, "Hello, I'm here. I'll play now." So yeah,
they've done enough. That's the terminology I love for that. More of an English thing, but they get to the front or get near the front. They've done enough.
yeah, they've done enough. Yeah, exactly. Scared of the camera, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's race 6.
Love it. Give us that overview of the market again one time, Dallas. What are we looking at here?
So the favourite is Gilbert, Pack Chaser, $2.70. Real Boss, Pack Chaser, $3.50. And the way I really like the way Naresh has worked it out with no more deals, likely to be a leader, and that's the one that'll probably look like they'll run past it 5 times in the straight, but you get paid on winning. No more deals, about the $6 mark.
No more deals. Let's move on in this card to the 9th race. Naresh, what are we looking at here?
All right, I'm going with number 8, Print Quality, but let me say that I'm not normally one to select obvious horses, right? But and Print Quality couldn't be more obvious in this race, although he won't start favorite. That role will go to Neo Star coming off a pretty easy maiden win. So I don't really go for obvious horses, but neither do I go for horses that just race the clock like Neo Star did last time. Print Quality comes off a solid second at a distance short of his best against a horse that was much better than the level. And now he gets his perfect trip, and I think we'll get a nice square price of, say, what, Dallas, $350.
Yeah, well, it is at the moment. It is currently favourite, but we do expect Neo Star to come into favouritism. It's $3 Print Quality, and Neo Star's $4. But that's remembering, as we mentioned earlier on the show, Pete. These are markets that come out. Those markets are pretty much done Wednesday afternoon when the fields first come out. They have a lot of evolution to do it, and we probably expect those to swap positions as we get closer to game day.
Yeah, and you got to remember that's something you got to pay attention to when you're looking to get into these markets on MonmouthBets. When there's enough juice in the price, you're going to want to pounce right away, or you can wait and see what happens closer to the off and make sure you have all the information you can before you get into it. Anything else on this market, Dallas, before we move on to the last race we're going to talk about in this segment?
That was pretty much it. But you raised a good point, Pete. We've had a lot of people, because generally in for on track, for MonmouthBets, they're opened a lot earlier, but on track in Caymanas, we opened an hour and a half before the first. And a lot of people will come there, and generally, I think it's no secret, fixed odds markets will get a more competitive percentage or a better percentage for the punters the closer it gets to the race. The market matures, the bookmaker knows what's going on, your book's settled, you can take more risks with the prices. We've had a lot of people, Naresh, that have turned up to the races and seen, even money about a horse and gone, too short, I'm going home. And then by the time the race gets around, they're out to $4.50 or something. So, again, learning about fixed odds is about learning how to read the market, knowing that essentially the general market is going to get more competitive closer to it. It doesn't mean that individual horse will, but as you've mentioned, if you think that with something that Jess tipped earlier, the 40-1 chance, that's massive overs, take that, because that doesn't really matter, and it could start 10-1. But the overall market percentage is going to get better the closer you get to the race.
That's exactly how it works. Let's proceed to race number 10. What are we looking at here, Dallas, in terms of the overall market?
We've got a very interesting horse here, Pete. It's shipped in from Gulfstream Park, and we've got the Moody Mile, which I think is worth about $250,000 US this year, Naresh. So we're going to see a few horses from the US come down being targeted for it. Easy as ABC has come from Gulfstream. So we put it up favourite at $2.90. Bit of a query on it, obviously. No matter how good a horse you are, you're still got to be able to travel, and traveling to a different country. I've seen so many horses that have come to Australia with, huge wraps on form. They'd win by 100 lengths, but you've also got to acclimatise as well too. But it's $2.90 favourite at the moment. I'm looking forward to Naresh's thoughts on this. Ahead of I've Got Magic, who is around the $3 mark, and Race Car, the next horse, which I think are the three that Naresh are going to talk about, at around about the $4.60 mark. But that's it's a very interesting race to wrap up the last, especially with this US import making his first local start.
What will it be, Naresh? Will it be the Jackson 5 hunch play or something else as we get to the 10th race here?
We're going with number 5. I've got Magic. Again, I don't really fancy tipping obvious horses, but I've got Magic, simply put, is the quickest and the best horse in the race, right? And that, as you know, you guys have been around, counts for everything. So Easy as ABC comes with a lot of hype. He hasn't been looked that impressive to me here. I don't even think he's a 6 furlong horse either. And I've got Magic, who's also a fellow American bred, is much quicker, third off the layoff. And I think I've got Magic will, as they say in Jamaica, make one skate, start to finish. Okay.
And you would say, what do you just mentioned there that you haven't been overly taken with the track work reports from Easy as ABC. What's your take on it?
Physically, I've heard that he's a good looker. He's running starter allowance races at Gulfstream, which would translate good to allowance races here or top level races here in Jamaica. But he just hasn't acclimatized very well based on what I have heard. And the workouts look the same in the track guide. So he would have to come really, really sharp to upstage I've got Magic, who's a pretty decent horse in his own right.
I've got Magic, sounds like the one there in the 10th race at Caymanas on Saturday. Naresh, really appreciate your appearance here, and we'll see if we can keep this wonderful run going you've been having on these shows. It's been very fun catching up with you and talking to you about all these races. Any other closing thoughts on this Caymanas card, Naresh?
More closing thoughts on betting fixed odds, which is you can actually pick a loser and win by betting to place, right? So I always share a story where I was betting with a friend and he bet $1,000 on a horse to win at Saratoga, and I bet $1,000 on a horse to show in the same race. And his horse won by 28 lengths at $1.80, 4 to 5. And my horse came third by 50 lengths and paid $16 to show, right? So I got 8,000 and he got 1,800. And to this day, he says his bet was better than mine because his horse won. But my bet was better than his because I made more money.
Exactly.
And it's actually worth noting, Pete. I mean, obviously we talk generally in terms of winning or not winning, but always keep in mind that you've got the place and show option open at on MonmouthBets as well too. So especially in races where there's a silly favourite or something like that, there are still those options, and not far away is going to be same race parlays as well too. So that's the other options that are going to be coming in on top of plenty of other features.
Great tease for future conversations. Got to remember the sign-up bonus for new players, the sign-up bonus for the re-up bonus for returning players, as well as those place money back terms. You can read all about that on MonmouthBets. Naresh, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you, my friend.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Next up in the show, we bring in a man who's been with us on each of these Fixed on Racing shows, my colleague over at In the Money Media. You also know him for the work he does behind the mic at Sam Houston. He is Nick Tammaro. Nick, how are things?
I'm doing great, my friend. Good to be with you. It's become a regular thing, which is good. And I guess I've done at least decently enough to be asked back. So
2 from 2 last week, Pete. 2 from 2 for Nick last week. Well,
yeah, you've been flying. You've been doing better than your Astros, who've been making me crazy, losing 2 at home to the Oakland A's last week.
Not pretty. Not pretty. Salvaging one with a walk-off win on Wednesday afternoon, no good. Not a good thing. But no, there's been some bright days at Meadowlands so far in the couple or 1 week we've been there, and then one the prior week at Monmouth. So it's been a fun little beginning to the fall season.
So the weather is very much in play at Monmouth at Meadowlands this weekend. But, you know, as handicappers, horse players, form studiers are sometimes wrong. Sometimes so are the weather predictors. If that is the case, and they are wrong, and racing does go ahead at the Meadowlands, what are some ideas we might be looking at this weekend?
Yeah, a couple of spots I thought might be a little bit interesting. There's a race that is common amongst a couple of horses that are actually running on Friday night at Meadowlands, and that's a card that should take place without issue whatsoever. In case you've been somehow removed from any kind of racing-related weather discussion, the weather in the Northeast this weekend is supposed to be pretty foul, and that's definitely going to affect PARX on Saturday, likely to affect Meadowlands on Saturday night. So if they go, third race, the 7, Artie's Angel, comes out of that 9th race on September 9th. And during the first episode of us taping this, we actually talked about this race. And I mentioned that I really like Shady McGee and Spites per Comet. Well, Shady McGee and Spites per Comet are actually running on Friday night in a $25,000 claimer. Kelly Breen has remained somewhat bullish with Artie's Angel, keeping him in the one other than, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I'm willing to give him a try. He was badly pace compromised in that race that I referenced, the 9th from September 9th. I mean, they walked on the front end in that race. And the eventual wire-to-wire winner, Great King, who was in light as a feather with Matty Oliver on board, really took advantage of the pace scenario and parlayed that to an open lengths win. And I mean, it was the quintessential merry-go-round. The 1-2 finishers never were headed. And Shady McGee, who ended up getting up for third, I think is a tremendous bet back on Friday night. And I'd also like to try Artie's Angel in here in what should be a little bit more honestly run race, that being the 3rd on Saturday night, the 7 Artie's Angel.
Do we have prices for that, Dallas, yet, or
what's the attitude? I think we're almost conceding Monmouth at Meadowlands on Saturday night, Pete. So at this stage we don't. But just in case there is a miracle, I think Nick's got one more that we can look at, Nick.
Yeah, and I think on Artie's Angel, we'd probably be looking at somewhere around 8-1 or so in the fixed odds market, something like that. 6-1 on the morning line is a comparable type of price. So I do think that's a horse that could drift up with some of the other horses in there. The other one I wanted to mention actually came in the nightcap. The 2 on the payroll, Anthony Margata Jr. with Paco on board. This horse took the worst of it on the front end last time in a pretty fast-paced race that fell apart late. The early leader in that race is a horse named Flirtini, who ended up finishing last on the payroll, beat that horse by about 8 lengths, which is a hard thing to do at 5 furlongs. And on the payroll did kind of stick in there all the way to the end, losing the race by a grand total of half a length, a head and a neck. And I thought that was a pretty strong performance, all things considered. This is a filly who began her career with Todd Pletcher, relocated to Margata's barn, and has really stepped up right away. This would be her 3rd start off the layoff, 3rd of her form cycle as well. And I get the feeling that Paco is going to really put the pedal to the metal out of the gate, even if this horse ends up having to deal with the likes of Explosive Exchange a little bit early. I think she can rate comfortably just a bit off of it and will really avenge that narrow miss last time out. So hopefully they go. Couple interesting plays for Meadowlands Saturday night. If not, we'll certainly have more in the hopper next week.
And these are runners to mark in your stable mail as well, even if it doesn't end up being relevant on Saturday night. Maybe some runners to keep an eye on going forward for wherever they turn up next based on Nick's say-so. Nick, while we have you, we know they're going to do everything they can to run at PARX on Saturday. They don't have the same challenges in terms of, the all-turf situation of Monmouth at Meadowlands. Let's get your thoughts on the big stakes races, starting with race number 11, the Gallant Bob.
Oh, it's funny. This is a race that has actually yielded some really strong performances over the years and some horses that have ended up being influential in the Breeders' Cup, not necessarily because of how well they ran, but because of how much money they took. And those years, Gallant Bob, those editions are certainly not going to look at this year's and think, boy, it really earned its place. It is not that kind of Gallant Bob. It's a much, much softer field. But the good thing is that it's left us with a pretty competitive bunch, all things considered. So I took a shot with 90% Maddie. I'm a little bit of a sucker for cutbacks. I'm not wild about this horse on a wet track. He's been a little dull in a couple of wet track races, including that crowd pleaser. I shouldn't say dull, but he did run a good second in the PARX Juvenile last year behind Recruiter. I just think this horse has needed a cutback. I want to play the cutbacks. I want horses that maybe have been doing the wrong thing and are getting to what they prefer. And when you have a horse like this that's lost ground in the stretch of every recent race going 2 turns, I know it's simple, but that's generally a sign that the horse needs to go shorter. He has a good bit of speed, which is going to keep him from being terribly far off of it. And quite honestly, to run an 82 Beyer speed figure at the beginning of your 3-year-old season, going 7/8, that's strong. So this is the kind of horse that if you can project a forward move off of an improved race last time out in the Smarty Jones, I could see him really having a say in this at a nice price.
9 to 2.
And I think you will probably be looking at double digits here, Dallas, right?
No, only 9 to 2 at the moment, Pete. 10 to 1 morning line, but our modelling is sort of leaning with Nick 9 to 2, 90%, Matty.
We'll see how it goes between Jess's Praetorian Guard and Nick's 90% Matty. Maybe a chance to get a bit of a price in anyway in the Gallant Bob, which goes as race number 11 on Saturday at PARX. Let's move to the grade 1 action in the cotillion for these 3-year-old fillies. And this time, I do think we have some more tape to look at.
We definitely do, Pete. And this is, I'm pretty sure, Nick's selection, a Colt destroying the field in the Monmouth Oaks.
And here comes Occult, and Fergal Lynch is looking for another one. And Occult now gets the cue out in the center of the racetrack as they reach the top of the stretch. Occult has kicked for home and quickly opens up through 3 widening lengths. It is all Occult is just running away from the field right now with a final furlong to go. Foggy Night is in the clear, but Occult made that big move on the far turn. Fergal Lynch with a stakes double back-to-back, and it's going to be Occult to dominate the Oaks field.
Destroying indeed, widening from 5 lengths at the pace call all the way out to 10 plus. Occult clearly doing the business under Fergal Lynch back there in late July, coming back here on the big day. Nick, you think she can back up this performance on Saturday?
You know, I do, Pete, and I think, and I was among them. I was somebody who really condemned the form of that gazelle pretty quickly afterwards. And, you know, I felt like a fool after Gambling Girl came back and ran so well in the Kentucky Oaks. And I just now, with the benefit of hindsight, I just think it was one of those races that are a good reminder that on any given day, anything can happen. Because Promiser America looks like she could probably be a 50 claimer at this point if she didn't have that graded black type next to her name. And Occult looks like the horse that we expected her to be that day. She really has put things together well in her last 2 starts. And I'm including the 3rd place finish in the Acorn, where I thought she ran really well. She was wide much of the way that day. I did think there was a little bit of an advantage to saving ground on Belmont Stakes Eve, if you will. And then the Monmouth Oaks was just a very complete performance. One thing we knew early on about Occult is that she's a real stayer. She's a horse who wants to go long. And I think there's a world in which a race that her trainer ended up winning, the Alabama, was likely to be the target for her, especially when you saw that Chad was willing to stretch her to 9 furlongs in just her 3rd career start in January of her 3-year-old season. And she really took to the distance nicely. So, you know, winning that race actually over Affirmative Lady, who came back and won the Gulfstream Oaks, and of course, Gambling Girl as well. So I'm looking for Occult to take another step forward here. And, you know, this is a bit of an anti-Pretty Mischievous opinion on my part, mainly because, you know, I have a lot of respect for what Pretty Mischievous has done this year, but you know, it's hard to talk about her last race without acknowledging that she was barely going to get up for second if what should have, you know, was going to happen had happened in that race. And she didn't really run very well. She got a big pace to run at. She was supposed to really flourish with a cutback and that kind of setup. And I thought she was just okay. And I wonder with these 3-year-old fillies sometimes when they're so good so early, if they peak and the rest of the crop is starting to maybe catch up to them a little bit, because it's not as if she's been appreciably faster than at least some of the rivals she's meeting in here on speed figures.
It's totally fair point. I mean, resume alone, you see Pretty Mischievous in there. There's 3 grade 1 wins to her name, and you want to think she's clearly the best of this division, but there's no doubt about it, Nick. I mean, you know, not to dwell on the test, but she was going to be 3rd if that race had played out the way that you know, it had looked like it was before the tragic ending to that race. And it's hard to not leave it with the idea that she just ends up a little bit flattered. So I don't mind at all the idea of reaching for a little bit of a price in the cotillion. We'll see how it all plays out on Saturday in that one. Certainly major divisional implications for the 3-year-old fillies on display in that one. But let's pivot to the next race. That's race 13 on Saturday from PARX. It's the Pennsylvania Derby. We're going 1.5 miles. Grade 1 action for these 3-year-olds. Very curious to see which tape you want to look at in here, and then to hear your opinion. Dallas, what are we looking at?
Well, we might as well look at the favourite, Peter, Saudi Crown in the Jim Dandy at Saratoga, obviously appropriate where you are right now. And I think probably the big note is the track surface.
Angel of Empire, disarm, hit show in the center of the track. Less than 3/16 to go. Forte trying to get off the inside to try and run down Saudi Crown. He's in a tight spot. Angel of Empire outside of him. A thriller in the Jim Dandy. It's Saudi Crown digging down deep. The champ Forte's trying to get him on the money. And Angel of Empire, Saudi Crown, Forte. Here's the line. Photo finish. It's a very, very close photo between Forte and Saudi Crown.
We got sloppy going here. Saudi Crown looked like winning very late in the game. Forte ends up getting up, but Forte didn't do a whole lot for this form going forward in the Travers Stakes. So I'm left a little bit shaking my head, not wondering, not knowing exactly what to do with Saudi Crown. What do you think of his performance in this race in the Dandy, Nick? And what do you think we're going to see in Pennsylvania on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to look a little bit like last year's Cotillion that Florent Giroux rode Society in and just opened the throttle shortly after the start, let her run as hard as she could for as long as she could, and she just buried everybody on the front end. I think those are the tactics you kind of have to use if you're him in here, especially if the wet surface leads to any kind of noticeable track profile. But I thought Saudi Crown ran tremendously well in his last start. I was actually at Keeneland the day he debuted, and he looked like a very professional horse, always dreaming progeny, really had not done well first time out. So this is a horse who's been incredibly precocious, and he's really just been very unlucky to have those 2 nose defeats. I thought he lost nothing in defeat last time out. As you acknowledged, he will be favored in this race. It's not really, I'm not going to get too much into line criticism, but it's a little embarrassing he's not the morning line favorite in this race, because he's going to be a very, very heavy favorite when all is said and done. And you expect him to win. You know, I expect him to win. I think he's better than these horses. I think his last 2 races make it very clear that he is really at the top end of this crop, and he's just been unfortunate in terms of unlucky in terms of losing those 2 races. I think the 1 1/8 miles is well within his scope. I also think that 1 1/8 miles at PARX and 1 1/8 miles at Saratoga are not created equal. I think 1 1/8 miles at Saratoga is a far more demanding trip. That's a surface that usually is a little bit more tiring. We've seen this PARX strip when it gets fast, especially, which it likely won't be, but still, it gets very glib, right? It gets very quick, and it really can kind of carry a horse along that might not otherwise be a true 9 furlong type animal. I think this is Saudi Crown's opportunity to really strut his stuff.
I definitely hear you. I mean, I understand the line maker's decision to get enthusiastic over Reincarnate, if only because of all the success Bob Baffert has had in the race. We were talking about it before on air with Jessica. Definitely seems like a favorite to oppose in our view. And it sounds like you're very much in line with that, Nick. I mean, would you be surprised to see Reincarnate win?
I wouldn't be surprised. You know, the problem that I have with this horse is that he has a little bit of national treasure in him, in that there's a huge dichotomy in his form between when he has the lead and when he doesn't. And he is not getting the lead in this race. I mean, the only way he gets the lead in this race is if Saudi Crown's stall doors don't open. Right. I mean, he is not nearly as fast as Saudi Crown. He's drawn on the far outside, and Juan Hernandez, you know, with all due respect, has not exactly distinguished himself as the travel squad rider. I think that you know, Baffert is giving him this opportunity because he's ridden this horse really without any issue in past starts, but he's had a very hard time passing horses. And I think you're going to have to, my problem with him is that you're going to be asking him to do something he's not done clearly, and you're going to pay a real premium for it. And I just don't want to pay that kind of tax on these horses. I want a bit better price. And, you know, Pete, I would have to ask, with all of the Baffert love, in terms of the races that his horses have run in, if we had a lot of them to do over, do you think races like the Haskell and the Alan Jerkins and the Travers would be bet a little differently? I mean, his horses have been getting pounded everywhere. I don't think Arabian Night ends up a sub-even money shot if you're betting that Haskell over again.
No, I think that makes absolute sense. And I think you make one of the best points about how to bet against a horse who's going to be a favorite or among the favorites. When you look at those PPs and you see that their best races are all when they're able to make the lead, and then you look at a race like this where there's at least, one or two others who are clearly faster early, that's a chance to take a stand. Now, would it surprise me if Bob Baffert stuffs us in a locker, kicks sand in our face? No, it would not. But I do think it's the right way to bet, to impose Reincarnate in this spot. We'll see how it turns out. Dallas, what do you think?
Yeah, but on Reincarnate, it actually has a bit of a similar feel to Arabian Night, doesn't it? Arabian Night was drawn the outside. I remember saying I declared it an absolute certainty on our preview, and it was wrong. But I also said I didn't want to see any silliness go on in the start, and then obviously they've taken each other on. Arabian Night was half its own enemy, but not settling. But in a similar position where it's drawn that outside, you've got to make a decision with Reincarnate, as you said. Do you go forward, push on, and run sectionals that it's not comfortable of, or get it to do something else? And it's similar to where Arabian Night was, where, Arabian Night, was pretty ordinary, I think, we're all said and done, but after being softened up. And Reincarnate is sort of in that same position of, what do you do? You're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. And that looks similar with the same trainer.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for sure. I mean, this 3-year-old division, they've taken turns beating each other, still seems open, and we're going to get some key data points and some key form lines about what's going on as we go forward in this Pennsylvania Derby on Saturday. Rain or no rain. It's been really great getting a chance, Nick, to get your thoughts on these races. Dallas, obviously fantastic to have you with us. We'll remind folks one more time about the fact that if you go to Monmouth Bets, you can get all the terms for the place money back opportunities at these races in PARX on Saturday. You also have sign-up bonuses, whether you're a new player or a returning player. Monmouth gives you an opportunity to get these free bets. We're going to encourage you to check that information out as well. We're going to be back next weekend on Fixed On Racing with much more information as well. So for Nick and for Naresh and for Jessica and Dallas and everybody who's watching today's shows, we thank you for tuning in. We thank you for checking out the Monmouth Bets platform. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your fixed odds photos.